I think we both just wanted to win, and that's where the drive came from.
Like, there is a need because no one knows how to do anything with it.
I mean, everyone supported us through all this. How would we not give back to the same people?
Where was the first moment when you guys kind of felt like, hey, we might have something here? From South Bend to Evansville and everywhere in between, this is Get In, the show focused on the Hoosier State and the incredible stories happening here today. I'm Nate Spengel, founder of Get Indiana, and I will be your host for today's conversation. All right, folks, if you're in the mood for some seriously good eats, let me tell you about the HC Tavern and Kitchen in the heart of the Fishers District. It's the spot whether you're grabbing a business lunch, brunch with friends, a romantic dinner, or just hanging out and enjoying some cocktails. They have huge culinary classics like the world-famous St. Elmo shrimp cocktail and the filet sliders, as well as dishes you can only find at the HC Tavern, like the lobster cargo and the spinalis steak. I mean, come on, does it get better than that? And you know what's awesome? It's right near all the action, close to the Fishers Event Center, IKEA, and Topgolf. So no matter what your day's looking like, a stop at the HC Tavern and Kitchen just makes sense. The vibe is super welcoming with a touch of class. Perfect for any occasion, whether you're out with friends or making it a date night. So whether you're in the area looking for a fun night out or looking for a place to grab a bite after shopping, swing by the HC Tavern and Kitchen. You'll see what I'm talking about. Good vibes, amazing food, and amazing hospitality. Now let's get back into it. Today I'm joined by Jack, Hope, and Brad Persic, the owners of Hope Plumbing, a full-service, locally owned residential plumbing company serving Indianapolis and the surrounding area. Today, we're going to be talking about the founding story of Hope Plumbing and their journey over the last 17 years, how they're investing in the community and how that helps fuel their business strategy, and the future of trades in Indiana, as well as talent attraction, and these different options that high school graduates can think of as they're coming out of high school and thinking about what's next for them. Jack, Brad, welcome to the show.
Thanks, sweet,
Yeah.
good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
I am excited about this one. So anyone that's in the greater Indianapolis area that maybe spends a little bit of time in South Broad Ripple knows that Hope Plumbing runs the 54th and College billboard scene.
Yeah, we like
there's
that billboard.
always something cool on there. I don't remember who you guys took it over from, but a long time ago, maybe 5 years when I just moved to town, there was an ad and it said, pick up the phone and call something for insurance. And there was no number on the billboard. And I remember taking a video and thinking, like, that is like horrible marketing. And then I think pretty soon after that, like, you guys started getting on there and have run some of the funniest ads, run some awesome community ads. And I just love seeing that. And it's just been my first foray into learning about Hope Plumbing and how active you guys are in the community. And I'm super excited to dive into that. But before we get into what it looks like today, let's go back 17 years and hear about how you guys got your start and what caused you two to want to go start a plumbing company.
So Brad and I, long story short, found ourselves working at another plumbing business here in town, 25 and 24, somewhere in that range. Both of us needed jobs. This was a family friend's business, and they were great to us. I mean, they genuinely were super awesome to Brad and I, but I think we just had different ideas, visions for what we wanted to do, and started having, the sort of like conversation about like, what would it look like if we did this, and could we keep ourselves busy? And one way or another, some combination of Brad wrapping up his 4 years of schooling to get his plumbing license, my grandfather dying in April of 2007, it was like the push that I think we needed to like, all right, let's do it. Brad's wife was also pregnant at the time, so there was
in 2007 we were going to leave our jobs with a pregnant wife and start a business. And if you guys can all remember what was happening around 2007, it was a pretty hectic time in the U.S. So
yeah, there was a lot going on.
Looking back, it seems pretty wild.
It was wild. It was awesome.
What was the final domino that like led you to, jump ship, pregnant? Like, you got to really be convicted to do something if you're willing to put not only your livelihood, but your family, your spouse, and your future child's livelihood on the line on that.
Yeah, for sure. For me, that was the push. Like, that was, I joked, I have 4 kids. I joked that that was my motivation. I just kept having kids because it like pushes you to grind harder and harder for them, which is not exactly accurate. But yeah, it was more so it's like now or never. My wife's pregnant, she has the baby, then your life is speeding up. Like, let's take a chance now. And I think you need to touch back that Jack was contemplating going back to school, or you were going back to school.
I was in school. Well, it was the summer that I decided to not go pursue a doctorate and to stay and get the master's degree in Indianapolis. So that
Wait, hold on. Your options were get your doctorate or start a plumbing company?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's sick.
that's
What
what
were
was
you
happening.
studying? What was the doctorate going to be?
Philosophy. So I teach philosophy I taught at IUPUI, Marion, and I've been at Butler for 4 or 5 years.
You might be the only plumbing philosopher.
It's a very niche market, yeah.
Okay.
I believe he is.
So your decisions were you keep pursuing the doctorate or you start a plumbing company.
Yeah.
Your decisions were I'm about to have a child and it's now or never for entrepreneurship and let's just do this thing.
Well, yeah. So Jack was my manager, my boss at this other company. I was a plumbing service tech. Like he said, I was in school getting my license. And at that point, my option, I just assumed I would be a plumbing technician. That's what my career was going to be. I was happy with that. And then when we started, seeing the direction this company was going, and we worked really well together. Jack had a lot of things he brought to the table from being into the office, and then I was out in the field. So we started having like more of a serious conversation at that point about going out together on our own. And then, like he said, he had to make a decision about school. I had to make a decision with my family stuff going on, and we just went for it.
I think that's a crazy time and what a time to jump off. 2007 on the verge of, child doctorate. So day one, you're like, okay, we're going to do this plumbing company thing. What does that look like? Like you get started and you're like, okay, now we got to go out and knock on doors and say, does anyone need their drain cleaned? Or
Yes. We started for the first, I don't even know, year anyway. If we weren't actively doing plumbing work, we were literally walking door to door with door hangers and hanging them on doors. And like, my mom passed them out. Carrie used to pass them out. Brad's brother-in-law used to pass them out, who now works for us. So we'd like be walking, like hanging door flyers, and our phone would ring, and somebody would, have a leak or whatever it was. They'd be like, "Do you have time to get to us today?" And we'd be like, "Well, let me check our schedule." It's like, "Yes, we definitely have time." But you're just trying to sound like you're professional.
You answer it like, "Oh, plumbing, how can I get direct your call?" And then you change your voice like, "Yeah, we can be out there."
yeah, it's pretty close to that.
Dude, I love it. Okay,
Seriously.
so you're starting to drum up some business through these like old school grassroots community, awareness there. Where was the first moment when you guys kind of felt like, hey, we might have something here?
I do want to say the other huge part of our initial success was I worked at Sullivan's Hardware all through high school, and Pat was kind enough to let us put business cards or flyers on the counters at his stores. And that was probably our biggest influx of work at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. It was awesome.
The greater Broad Ripple area kind of runs through Sullivan's Hardware, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like if you get in with that crew,
It's
and
a good crew.
Oh, it's awesome. They're great.
And the networking of the North Side Catholic schools. We both went to Chittard. I mean, you have an immediate in as far as once you put your name out there, people are willing to take a chance on you. And that North Side Catholic Mafia is
Dude,
a
I was gonna
serious
say
thing.
you said Catholic school, and I was like, you mean the mafia,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
No,
That's-
I totally agree. So I'm from a small town in northern Indiana. I come down to Indianapolis. Well, I go to DePaul, and then I end up in Indianapolis. Got connected to Chittard to coach wrestling through Graham Wilkerson, who is a Chittard grad, runs Genesis, all those fun things. And I was like, dude, private school, like. I don't know if that's like I'm a small our town was 1,200 people. 1A like
What town was
it's
it?
Bourbon, which is right by Plymouth and Warsaw.
Okay.
Like right in the middle of those two. And I was like, I don't know if I'm a private school guy. Like Range Rovers and Audis in the park, like that's not for me. And I show up day one, and I'm like, oh, this isn't what I had built up in my head. And then I got into the community, and it's like this small town within a huge town, right?
For sure.
Like
I think that's a super accurate description of what
Yeah.
those schools are.
and there was just as much, if not more, community than in a small town, like where I'm from. Like everyone's out at the football games, everyone's supporting each other, and then talk about you're starting a business and you had experience, like you had worked at Sullivan's, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll for sure support you in whatever you're doing. I think that's a really powerful piece of this like little north pocket of Indianapolis.
Yep.
Yeah, it was super, super helpful.
And so you're rolling through there, and you're starting to drum up some early business. And I think where was that moment when you're kind of like, because I think you start a plumbing company and it can end up as like, we're just gonna work for ourselves.
Yeah, it's tough because I think those things are easier to see in hindsight than they are when you're doing it. I don't know that there was a moment in real time where we were like, this is it or something. I mean, Brad's heard me talk about this, or we talk about it all the time. When one of the first things that we ever bought with Hope plumbing money that wasn't like a plumbing part we went to Dick's and bought each of us a nice pair of boots for the winter. And I remember that feeling like, man, we've made it.
We just bought work boots with company
didn't even
car.
like have
This
to
is
pay
crazy.
for this out of our pockets. You know, like it was a huge deal. So that was one of them.
That's how small we were.
Boot
If that
money,
gives you
baby.
yeah, that gives you an idea.
In that first year or so, how much time were you out on job sites? Like, did you have work every day, or was it like,
No,
gotta
not-
go drum up business?
We literally walked with flyers any moment we weren't working, and it didn't. I was thinking about this morning as I was coming in. I mean, there were times where we fixed a supply line on a toilet in Anderson at 1 a.m. And something kind of an unsaid thing that Jack and I did was we both ran to everything together. We went to every call. Hey, this call just came in. It's 2 a.m. And it actually doesn't take two people, but we just did it together. We both knew we were bought in 100% at that point.
Well, I have to ask then, how did you end up with the name on the above the
Hope's just a way cooler name than Persic.
We arm wrestled for it.
Really? That is surprising. I don't know if anyone's watching at home, but I did not see that. No, it does. Yeah, it is
Brad
good.
Yeah,
makes up a lot
Hope
of
is a much more marketable. And Jack left the earlier when we were talking about, he left that plumbing company and started as I stayed and finished my schooling. That's not the only reason. I mean, Persic is my last name, Hope. I mean, putting those two on the side of a truck, one is much more visible, easier. It's a positive word. It's a ton, yeah.
Hope and Persic kind of sounds like a law office.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure
yeah,
does.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So, okay,
Yeah.
so that makes sense. So you're rolling through there. You got some boot money for the winter.
Yep,
Things are kind of
got boot money.
Where did you kind of get to the point where you had enough work coming in that you started to add to your team? And when you're thinking through that, like making that first hire I think it's a little bit of a daunting first task.
It happened slowly over time. Like, the first person to start doing work for us did some work part-time and like was doing after hours stuff or whatever it was, or would take a call that Brad and I couldn't get to or cover a weekend or whatever that looked like. So it wasn't this like all or nothing hire for the first hire. We sort of slowly walked our way into it. I mean, honestly, it was just as the phone continued to ring, I remember sitting in the truck with Brad on so many days and looking at our schedule, like this is the calls that we need to get to, and being like, well, this is already impossible. Like it's
We can't get to all
7:30 in
these
the morning,
calls.
and there's no way this is all going to happen.
After several months of doing that and working, and our wives never knowing when we were going to get home or how long customers, as long as you would allow us in your house, we would come. It didn't matter if it was 9, 10 p.m. We were just willing to do every job presented to us. And there wasn't some huge business plan there. We were just doing work to ideally buy ourselves a lot of freedom, by working for yourself.
You think that, right?
You do
You're
think
buying
that,
yourself
but that's
freedom.
Yeah. So that was the idea. And I would say, to answer your question, in our heads, it was like if we could get to $1 million in sales a year. I remember having this, You've talked about it several times. That was it. Like we did it. We did $1 million in sale. And to be honest, we got there after pretty quickly, after a couple years. And
Pretty quickly to me, pretty quickly is like, within the first year. But like, how many years did it take you to get to that benchmark?
3 or 4.
yeah, 3 or
And
4
I
years.
think so many young entrepreneurs or like people that want to go start a business think that it's just like up and to the right,
Yeah.
you just start this, and they don't know about going to Anderson to fix a water supply line, and then it
They
takes
don't,
3
yeah.
years to hit, or 4 years or whatever it is to hit your goal that you initially set out to do.
Yes.
Like 4 years that's an entire college career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's
I-
not just like, it happened pretty quickly. Like
Yeah,
that's a long
100%.
time.
I was
Yeah.
also thinking just a second ago when you were talking about this, that one of the mistakes that people make is, like, as we're talking about, like, what was the goal and how did you decide? It's like, we just knew we needed to get busy, and we just kept going and kept going. There, like, later when the business was like real, we started making plans, but at the beginning it was just go. So people ask me all the time, like at Butler or wherever, like, what advice would you give me and like, about some specific question? And I'm like, just get started. Like, you're going to change your mind 15 times. Don't try to pre-plan it. Like, just get going, and you will figure it out. But if you just sit there and keep thinking about all the different ways you could do it, you'll never get anywhere. Just get started.
I love that advice, because so many people get caught up on their business plan and filing their LLC and this, that, the other. I'm just like, don't file an LLC till you can like make some money with this thing. Like you don't have to worry about filing your taxes until you have money to file. Like you need to file, right? Or like a lot of times college kids will ask me, like, I want to start this business. Like, what do you think about this idea, yada, yada, yada. And I'm just like, have you made the free Instagram account for it? Have you bought the $9.99 URL to build a website? Like, and it's like all these little baby steps you can just like start taking to like see if there's a reason to do this. Like, should this business exist or not?
Yeah.
And then a lot of it's just like being willing to spend 4 years, no matter what hour of the day it is, like showing up and building your reputation.
Well, I mean, the fastest way to overnight success is 10 to 12 years of consistent hard work. And I think if you told anyone when they're 21 or something, hey, if you really work your butt off right now for 10 years, you can get to where you want to be. It sounds like you said, a lot of people want to get this in 2 years, but that's really not that long of a time in the grand scheme of things. You just have to be willing to be consistent and work hard. But consistency is a big part of it every day.
I'm sure you guys can look back and there's not like one marketing effort that you did that just took you from 0 to $1 million.
No.
Or there's
Just
not.
it was Colleen.
Yeah, right.
Colleen.
Exactly. That's what did it. When it's like, and everyone thinks like, oh, well, like from the media perspective, they're like, you just have to get one video to go viral, and then you'll have millions of followers. And it's like, no, you just have to be good consistently.
Well, you're a wrestling coach. I mean, how many kids? I mean, yes, you get some phenoms, but most of them are the ones that are just willing to work every day that become really successful. And it's the compounding interest there.
It's and it's never the answer someone wants to hear. It's like, you don't need. There's no get rich quick scheme, right? It's all you just have to be good consistently over and over and over. And they're like, that seems really hard. I don't know if I want to do that. Like, I don't know if I want to drive to Anderson at 1 a.m. to change your life.
Yeah,
I love that story.
I don't either. You don't want to, but you just.
That's the option.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get to a little bit of like that family dynamic, right? Mm-hmm. So you have your first child. How far into less than 9 months into the business, right?
I mean, she had just gotten pregnant, so yeah, about a year, pretty much a year.
And so you have a child at home. You're doing, all these jobs, working together. How does the idea?
Are you saying I was absent?
I'm asking.
I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm saying you're starting
I was
gone
a lot for that.
Like that
amount of time.
in those like early years of a business, the infancy of a business and the infancy of an infant, that's a hard thing to balance.
Yep.
And so what was going through that dynamic, and just take us to what your life was like in that moment.
It was really busy. My wife also did hair, so she worked the evenings. So ideally, when I could get home, and luckily my mom had just retired and she lives close, so she was a big help there. But yeah, it was a lot of passing by each other. Like, hey, you had the kid all day. I got home later. I relieved my mom, and then she got home late from doing hair. And like Jack said, there wasn't some business plan. We were just one job after another, and luckily we both had supportive wives that were just like, we didn't really know. We just kept working one day after another, and it's almost like a fog. Those first 4 or 5 years were just, and then we joined a best practice group, which assigns us a business coach, and we work with other HVAC, plumbing, and electrical companies throughout the nation. That is when we started to get serious. So at that point, we were at about $2.5 million.
1.8.
1.8 is what we were. Yeah, I thought we were somewhere. I thought we were over 2 actually.
Because I remember I had to take financial statements to go to the.
Yeah.
So you're doing 1.8 million a year. How many employees do you have at that time?
6 or 7.
Okay, so it's a good small business.
Yeah, it's great. It's crazy. Like every step of the way, we've thought like, dude, this is amazing. There was never some part where it was like, oh, I feel like this is not fair. I wish it was going better. I think we enjoyed every part of it. But like Brad's starting to say, that joining this best practices business was really, well, we saw, I went to this first one and I saw a business that was way bigger than we were. I mean, they were 7 or 8 times our size. And I just had until I saw that, I just didn't know that was a thing that existed, that there was a residential plumbing company with 75 employees doing $12 million in sales and had like 5 backhoes and like a call. I was just like, I couldn't it took me the whole time there to wrap my head around it. And I remember coming back and being like, Brad, we've got to get like uniforms and we've got to do, he's like, no, we're not. So it was.
I'm in this t-shirt 90% of my life. And I'm
Yeah,
like, hold on,
for sure.
we need to be like polos tucked in and commercialized, it was.
So that was the beginning of, I think, starting to think of Hope Plumbing not as the business we were working in, but as a business that we were going to work on and build. And that was 8 years ago. 8 or 9 years ago.
So you'd already been doing it for almost a
That was
decade at that
longer than
point.
that.
We were 6 or 7 years in.
6 or 7 years
So
in.
10 or so years ago is when we joined this best practice group, which really, that changed the trajectory for sure. I mean, we've always had a pretty open dialogue between the two of us as far as like, hey, what we're doing. And he was, after coming back from that, he's like, I've got to get out of the field. And, you know, you've talked to people that run businesses of getting out of the business and working on it rather than in it. And that was the wake up call we needed. Like, oh, we're at $2 million. Maybe we could really do something serious here. Maybe we can like structure this, and we have the people around us now to help us do that. So, and the resources. So that's when we really started to dial in as a business rather than just two guys working for themselves.
Do you have a good sense of a few of those early dominoes? So I hear people all the time say, you got to stop working in the business and start working on the business.
Sure.
But in theory, in the philosophy of it makes a ton of sense. Putting it into practice can be more difficult.
That you're spot on.
So do you have advice of like a few of those first actionable items that you did to start freeing up time or being more efficient or working on your business?
Yeah, real quick, Jack. I'll just say Jack came to me after this and was like, I have to not run calls anymore. I need to be in the office. And again, it speaks to the relationship that him and I have that we discussed it. And it's like, yeah, that's what makes sense because I was still going to run calls. And I think there's a lot of people that are, if you're not running calls, why do I have to run calls? You know, that type of behavior. And that was never the situation. It was very clear, like, okay, we'll do that. And he left doing any calls. He was answering phones. He was doing invoicing. We hired a bookkeeper. And
I mean, it was
until I could do that too.
That was the point, was that there was all this stuff. I mean, that would be impossible to come up. There was just all this stuff that I just couldn't do if I was in a truck with Brad. And it was just like, look, if we want to do any of this stuff, I have to stop doing calls. That was sort of the decision. And then from there, you just start figuring it out.
When you came to say that, were you like maybe nervous, or was there like an emotion of like, do you feel like you're bailing on your buddy that's like, hey, we're going to be 50-50 in this and they do the calls together like we have for years?
Like maybe-ish. We were always pretty driven. And I think we both always appreciated that both of us were trying to do what's best for everybody. We had plenty of arguments, but they were never about doubting someone's intentions. That was never what was happening.
Yep.
What to do with your time and energy was something we still fight about, right? But knowing that we're both working towards the same goal was never a issue. Was I able to understand, what I was asking of Brad? I mean, sure, but I don't know. It never occurred to me to not do it.
And I was able to understand why you were asking these things. Our relationship, we are wildly fortunate. The way we handle each other and the respect that we have for each other. And like you said, just simply knowing that we have the same common goal. We might have different opinions on how we want to get there, and we work through all of those. And that's just with no ego, just simply knowing that both want the best for this company.
And I think that's
some ego.
We just
aligned our egos together.
Hey, there you go. All right, y'all, let's talk hoops. You know March Madness is electric, but here's something you need to have on your radar. The Women's Basketball Invitation Tournament, known as the WBIT. The NCAA launched this in 2024, and it's bringing high-stakes, high-energy postseason basketball to women's basketball. And guess what? It's going down right here in Indianapolis at the legendary Hinkle Fieldhouse. This is where history happens. The semifinals are March 31st, and the championship is April 2nd. So if you want in on the action, now's the time. Tickets are crazy affordable, $29 for the championship game or just $44 for an all-session pass to catch all the final rounds. You can grab them on Ticketmaster or by clicking the link in the description below. Don't miss this high-level competition, rising stars, and that raw, unfiltered passion that makes college basketball the best. Be there. I think that a lot of people talk about when you're finding your business partner, like getting someone that's good at what you're not good at. Like filling up some of your voids and things like that, which is super smart. But I do think aligning on like work ethic or drive, because like the number one thing, I feel like it's like a little virus of like, oh, I'm way more invested in this than they are. And then it's just like, and that just like creeps into everything.
That happens so often.
I
have a ton of friends that blow up things that I think are amazing because of that very problem.
Yeah. So what advice would you guys have for picking like a co-founder, co-owner, business partner that you guys have thought about or have seen from other, guys that you run around with in the business circles?
I would just say work with one of us, right?
Yeah.
Just invest all your. I'm just kidding.
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, in some ways, it's like finding, I don't know what other phrase to use, but like your life partner. You just got to figure out if that's your vibe. Like, is this your person or not? Like,
You got to go on a few dates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all part of it. Like, you know, people say like, you know, do you worry about this, or is Brad better at this, or is this your, and I'm like, it's just not how we think about it any more than I get home and I start thinking about like, well, this is the part that I pitch into our relationship, and this is what Kylie does. Like, we're
keeping
doing this.
score really works
Yeah,
for every
that's
good relationship.
super helpful, right? Like, so it's just we're in this together, and I think if I had any real advice, it would be to somehow verify that you guys are like actually going to trust one another through this process, because if you're not, you'll be in trouble real fast.
I agree. That's a really good question. And I think we just got really lucky by that. But I think that knowing each other's core values, and sometimes that word core values is thrown around so often that it drives me crazy. But we are wildly different people as far as interests. I mean, you know, he's a philosophy teacher, and I, you know, run around with a bunch of kids all the time and things like that. And, but we both
I'm
have.
tall, you're short.
There it is.
There you go. Now you're seeing how he treats me. But honestly, knowing that we have a core value in the respect for each other.
Let me say something about luck. I think it's people hurt themselves by not recognizing the ways in which they're lucky, in which they're fortunate, that are well outside their control. And Brad and I have always been very aware of how fortunate we were to be in the positions that we were, to have gone to a place like Chittard, to have the support of our parents. I mean, to be able to have your mom come over and babysit is a huge deal. Like it's a huge deal.
You're right.
And people get caught up in their successes, and they do this. I pulled myself up by my boots. Like, stop. I'm not taking anything away from what Brad and I did by saying that we've been fortunate and we've been lucky. We just took advantage of the situation that we were in, but we were in a really good position to start. And I think people, when they fail to admit that to themselves, they make it a lot harder on themselves and the people around them, frankly, by not just like being honest about there's just a certain amount of luck that got Brad and I to this position.
And I always say it's like it's your job as the entrepreneur or the motivated individual to do whatever you can to increase your surface area to catch that luck, right?
Yes.
Where it's like when you work hard, it's a better chance that you're going to get lucky.
Yeah, for sure.
Everyone's like every successful business, I don't care what it is, like it's not just all piss and vinegar and sweat and determination. Like there's a little bit of luck in there somewhere.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, we started a business called Hope Plumbing when Barack Obama was spending $97 billion marketing the word hope. So like, it was like, we didn't choose that. Like we didn't know when we were 25 that there was going to be this continual labor shortage of plumbers, which makes it so that we're just busy all the time. Like, we didn't do some study where we figured out that
The market research?
Yeah.
However, on the flip side of that, you're 100% right, Jack, but we did identify the company we were working for prior to us going out on our own did 99% commercial work. And during 2007, we identified really quickly that all those guys follow around 1 to 5 contractors. And if those guys go belly up, well, you're in a really tough situation. So we quickly learned that doing service work, Jack says it all the time, rather than going for a home run, let's just hit singles, 90% of the time.
Money, he gets on base.
Yeah,
He gets on base.
Let's get on
Right?
base
There you go.
every time. So yes, while we didn't know some things, we did identify pretty quickly that we needed to do service work and switch this up at a time that was not popular.
So you join this best practices group, you see this like next phase, right?
Yeah.
Where you can run this massive 75-person plumbing company with backhoes and all the fun stuff. And then you start putting things into practice. Like you get out of the truck and get into the office. And then what were some of the next big steps on there to get you guys to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, uniforms in my mind was one of them. Having processes of any kind. I mean, until then, it was just kind of you'd go in the morning and you would just kind of do stuff all day until the stuff was done. What we got from Nexstar was offering different lines of products, right? So offering not just one type of water heater, but 2 types of water heaters, or asking somebody when you're at their house, instead of just going in and like fixing the one thing that's there, being like, do you want me to look at your other toilets to see if this is getting ready to do the same thing as the one that we're working on, so we don't have to come back in 3 weeks to do the same thing or whatever. So it made us start thinking about
learning to provide options.
Sure.
And working with companies that were massive compared to us. We're $50 million companies, and talking to people that were running those and just taking all those nuggets and implementing those. And I also think we were able to identify the things we were not good at to hire people to do those things. Yeah. And that
what was the first one that you guys identified of we got to have someone do that?
Answering the phone.
Really?
Like scheduling calls.
That's a tedious job.
I'd been doing it long enough that frankly I was just getting grumpy. And it was like, yeah, you're kind of being a jerk on the phone. And it's like I'm busy and I'm tired and I'm just trying to do stuff. I don't mean it, but that was one of the real obvious ones early on. That
you stopped answering phones. I started answering more phones. Yeah. We hired people to assist with that. You started running the marketing. Mm-hmm. And again, it just was the same thing. Work yourself out of marketing to the point where we needed to hire a marketer. And part of our goal, once we identified, okay, we can be a business. And let me just touch on that real quick. In our position, you can be self-employed or you can run a business. And there's two different, neither of them are a bad thing. But being self-employed are what Jack and I were doing, where we have to do the jobs. We have to be on the Zoom calls. We have to be there. If you want to run a real business, you can step away ideally for a year and your processes are running and people are running and you have people to run it and hire and delegate and see the vision, right? And so we started to realize okay, there's a big difference in that. And again, neither of them are wrong. Some people just want to work for themselves, and that was a great time. And we wanted to keep pushing. A lot of it for me, and I think Jack too, was it opens up so many more opportunities for other people to have jobs and to keep pushing Indianapolis. And then we can do the community stuff that we do. We can just open more doors for everybody, right?
Running a business versus being self-employed, I think, is an interesting thread to pull on, because it's like, how many people do you know that are the founder, the owner, the CEO of XYZ thing, but if they weren't there for a month,
they can't let go of the control. Yeah. And I think we were both able to do that. As soon as we really started working with these groups and talking to other owners and things, we were like, oh yeah, well, this person would be way better at doing this than I am, or I'm not great at this, and who could we have hire? And that's where the growth really started happening, is when you let go. It's not always holding it so tight.
Well, yeah, where was that first moment, right? You're doing, you're a decade in. I don't know if you guys were taking vacations and the other were in cover for that.
I'd say the first big one was I stopped working Mondays. I honestly don't remember what even prompted it. Was I starting to teach again?
I think you were teaching. I think you took a teaching job.
Yeah.
And I think you were like, I'm going to teach on Mondays. Right. And it was, and again, back to our relationship, I thought it was amazing. I know Jack has a passion for teaching, and I know that he's always loved education. And so why would I not want him to try to, do the thing that he loves to do if we can make it work?
Wow. And so you're just like, Mondays.
I need Mondays to do the rest of my life.
I think that's a pretty cool. So 8 years ago, you were able to, that's when you can take your hands off, right?
Yeah. And it comes and goes. The amount of time that Brad and I need to be in the office or working on a project or whatever, if you're too rigid about it, you probably get yourself in a bad spot. But that made sense for us at the time. And I think I did that for a couple of years, and then at one point, I don't even remember where in there, I started running the excavator again at some point.
You just wanted to get back in there or needed to get back in?
Well, the excavator that we'd hired, who was great, his name's Tony Hellier, he's a great dude. He quit to start his own business that he still runs, and it's I wish Tony nothing but the best. But all of a sudden, we needed somebody to run the backhoe. We had jobs to do, and we had a backhoe that he had to pay for. And I was like, well, I'll figure that out. So I hopped in the backhoe, and my buddy Robert Tingle and I did all of our excavation work for 18 months, 2 years, something like that.
No way. That's fun.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Like a new challenge you get to solve.
Yeah, I loved it. It was great. There were days that it was really, really cold, but other than that, it was really fun.
I don't know a guy that wouldn't want to just rip around in a backhoe for a day. That's a pretty good time.
It's by far my favorite thing to do in terms of plumbing work.
Absolutely. So, Brad, you kind of mentioned your guys' involvement in the community, and it is very significant. If you live on this north side of Indianapolis, you definitely have seen some type of event or something where Hope Plumbing was a sponsor, a partner, involved with. Where did that root from? And like, when do you guys start prioritizing your local community so much?
I honestly don't know that we talked about it. It just seemed obvious.
Yeah,
I mean,
some of it just
think-
seems like common sense.
I think
If
part
you're
of it is my
successful-
Sullivan's Hardware background. I mean, what I learned at Sullivan's Hardware and then at this business where Brad and I worked is that what people value more than anything else is the customer service experience. I'm not saying price is not a factor, but like what people report to us is that somebody was nice or clean or helpful. You know, I'm not saying we never discuss price, but Sullivan's is the same way, right? Like you go in there because you want the experience, you want to support the local people. And I remember doing things when I was there in high school and like it clicking that like, yeah, this thing is being sold at a loss, but it's to provide a service to get people in here. And then also Pat has always been phenomenal about supporting the community. So honestly, I don't know that there was much of a conversation about it. It just seemed like it was the clear thing. Like, why wouldn't you support your community? That's literally who your customers are.
And that's where the core values, like it never was even a conversation. It was more of like, hey, we have an opportunity to do this. What do you think? Which tier do you want to do in this,
And it wasn't like, should we sponsor this or not? It was like, what are we going to sponsor?
Well, it's not how much can we afford?
I mean, everyone supported us through all this. How would we not give back to the same people? It just seems literally just obvious.
This is not saying that you do it because it's a marketing thing, but there's also like
there is
there's a
marketing to
marketing
that.
thing, right?
This is the
100%,
thing.
yeah.
This is one of the places where I think Brad and I get along so well is people become so binary. They see it as this or that. And like with the question of what we're talking about right now, it's not do you support your community because it's good for the community or because it's good for your business? It's both. And that's just the answer. You don't have to separate those things. Both of those things can very easily exist at the same time.
What are a few of your favorite community initiatives that y'all have been involved in?
Sponsoring Haverford Little League was one of the first ones. Like when we sponsored the whole field, when it became Hope Plumbing Field, that felt like a really cool one to me.
Yeah.
That's one that pops out to me. I think sponsoring Pride, honestly, is a huge deal because it's not something that you see a lot of plumbing and HVAC businesses doing. I think we stand out quite a bit by supporting the Pride Parade every year.
Doing stuff with the Coburn place was a big deal.
Yeah.
I think. And
What's Coburn Place?
It's a shelter for battered women and children so they can
It's
have
not
a place
something
to
we do a
live.
ton of promoting for, but we are able to like help them out because we don't. That's one where you don't necessarily. It's not all about marketing. It's just about doing the right thing for people that need it. And so again, it's just the combination of doing all of it. You know, we have kids. You grew up playing at Haverford, so that's amazing.
Yeah.
Everybody knows somebody who's been in a abusive relationship, so that's amazing to help out if we can. And then doing things that are, Run 317 where people can, promote being healthy. It's just doing all these things. If we could do more, we would.
The Lights Up parade was cool. We put
Doing
Christmas
anything in
lights all
Broad Ripple.
over a truck and drove a truck in the Broad Ripple Lights Up parade.
Oh.
That was fun.
No, I think that is super important, and I really appreciate your insight there. Where it's not do you do this for the marketing or do you do this for because it's the right thing to do? It's like it can be both, and I think that is such a good. In my head, right? In my head, I was like, well, it's either you're doing this for yourself or you're doing this and it's like no, actually, it can be both. You can serve both purposes.
You can help the community. You can grow Hope Plumbing. Growing Hope Plumbing may provide a job within that community. Ideally, later on down the road, somebody's kid might see that and think it's cool or whatever it might be. So, it is like you said. It's hitting all of it.
You can give your wife flowers on Valentine's Day and think she's going to enjoy this, and it will probably score me some points as well. Right? Like it's all the same. Like everybody gets so caught up in choosing.
Yeah. Man, I love that. And I think that a piece of the community involvement that, one, it's the right thing. One, it helps with marketing. But two, talent attraction, right? Like when you're looking to snag a new service technician from another place and you want people to know who you are, know that you're trusted, reputable, and out in the community, right? So when it comes to talent attraction, how have you guys been able to bring top talent into Hope?
I think has become easier as we've gotten bigger because we become a desirable place to work. I think what Brad and I have always been good at is retention. And I only think that's because we have just continued to treat people and like be actually basically concerned about what their lives are like and recognize, we still go through these conversations at work where some young kid is like, doing stuff he shouldn't. And it's like, we're mad at him. And it's like, well, wait, he's 21 years old, man. Like, let's stop and have a conversation with him. And
or reflect back to all the things we were all doing at 21,
Yeah.
Come on.
Like, does he even know that this is a problem? You know what I mean? So I think for Brad and I, so much of it was just perpetually trying to put ourselves in everybody else's shoes. And what I always tell people is that our culture, good or bad, is a reflection of who Brad and I are as people. It's us. It's us through and through. And like sometimes I think that can be frustrating. It's sometimes not for people. We can be a lot sometimes. But other people come in and embrace it, and we let people be themselves. And like, we don't have policies about like how long your hair can be, or if you can have earrings or tattoos. We just let people kind of be people. And I think that's how we have been able to retain people over time, is that they just enjoy their jobs. And as we've gotten bigger, I mean, we can be competitive on pay and benefits, and we're a desirable place to work at this point.
And retention is a huge part of that, right? Like when you get a good employee, you need to keep them forever, ideally, right? The other piece though is the workforce development side and bringing young kids up to become plumbers.
We did hire, to answer you directly, we hired a recruiter who recruited all the time. That's all. I mean, we always say that we're always hiring. It's still our biggest obstacle. Is getting techs that can go into the homes of the customers that we have and present themselves. And it takes a lot to know all the processes in Hope Plumbing, and it takes dedication. So, and like we said at the beginning, the hard work and coming to work every day can be a challenge for a lot of the workforce now.
And I do, whenever I have you guys in, right, I always enjoy the personability. Is that a word, right?
Sure.
Like
we can use that.
It's a friendly face that comes in and knows their stuff. And sometimes you get, like, in any blue collar industry, you get people that are really good at the thing. Like you can fix the hell out of a garage door, but it's like,
but you can't talk to
But I don't know if I want to talk to this guy. The garage is that way.
Yeah. That's
we understand.
Right.
I think that developing talent is something that I talk to a lot of the trades and blue collar guests that I have, more blue collar guests that I have on here, learning about how you guys are thinking about developing this next generation. Because I don't know that many people that are like, yeah, I'm going to go to DePaul University and then I'm going to become a plumber.
You're spot on with that. Yeah. It's not the sexy thing to do, right? And the trades are.
But it's the whole thing, right? It at surface level, it's not the sexy thing to do, but like starting your own plumbing business.
We're trying to change that narrative.
Right?
Yeah. I just spoke at Chittard last year for Career Day, and it's an odd thing when you're in a college prep school discussing why the benefits are, what the benefits are to not go to college. I mean, I'm prepping my kids to go to college, but at the same time, I'm thinking exactly what you're saying. Like, man, so at Hope Plumbing, our average technician, just to be clear, is making right around $100,000 a year. They have no student loans or any debt. They have a take-home truck.
We pay for school.
We pay for their schooling. It's tiered based on their grades. But if you're paying attention at plumbing school, you can get an A. I mean, you just need to show up most of the time. And it matters for your career. So a lot of the guys do pretty well there. We have, a cell phone paid for, full benefits, take-home truck, matched 401ks. I mean, you can be 22, 23 years old, literally with no debt, making over $100,000 with the opportunity to manage at some point. We have a lot of young guys that say, hey, I would love to get out of the field. Perfect. Let's keep talking about this. And there's some guys that we think would be totally capable of that. And there's some guys that's like, oh, well, where can we fit you better somewhere? Something like that. But I think most people don't realize the opportunities that the trades have. And as more people aren't going into the trades, it's driving that cost up. It's driving the cost, it's driving how much these guys are making and what they can demand to make. So
for sure,
it's an amazing living.
Yeah. Well, I just had Dan Mattingly of NCW on. He was on
I know Dan.
earlier this week.
Yeah.
Good dude. And they're in the staffing of, more, he called them hammer swingers.
Yeah, they're just down the street from us.
Yeah. Right. And he talked about, you want to know where there's a need? Like, talk to your friends, college graduates out there that are listening. Talk to your friends. How many of them know how to do anything with their drains, with their toilets, like there is a need because no one knows how to do anything with it.
Yeah.
Your HVAC, all these different pieces.
Well, you have a guy for everything now. A guy that cuts your lawn. You get your groceries delivered. You have somebody who does your plumbing. I mean, there's a person to do everything for someone.
Yeah.
Well, it's the foundation for the business upstairs.
Neighbor serve. Yeah.
Is people trying to find people that are capable of doing the work done that they need on their home.
Yeah, exactly. Being reputable, locally owned, supporting your community, all of it's basically it's like the tech platform of Sullivan's, right? Like if you think of like that mindset of it all runs through your local community, like it makes a ton of sense there. Shout out to Dan and the team at Neighbor Serve.
Yeah, sure.
But I was just thinking through this, right? It's like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I want to go be a plumber. I don't know if I want to go work on HVAC. Who does it? It's such a rare job now. And if you think of like supply and demand, right? If it's rare, that means people are going to be willing to pay a decent chunk for it. And you can 22 years old making $100,000 and your own truck to take home. Like,
with no debt. And that is the part that I think is really difficult. Now I look back and I'm very proud of everything we've accomplished and what we've done. But there was absolutely a time when all your friends are going to college and they're coming back for Christmas breaks and you're saying, I'm in plumbing school and I'm working at you almost don't even want to, you just make up a story about something you're doing because there's a feeling of a failure there. And so how do you, to your question, how do you change that narrative for young kids to feel like you are actually being really successful right now rather than...
And did you guys do like a highlight reel video, like an Instagram reel? I think I sent one to Stephanie where it was like I saw a construction company and it looked like a football walkout highlight tape where it was like hammer swing and this and that and the other thing.
I don't know, but we need to do that. Where
like,
are you,
Colleen? It was hyping up.
Put it together.
And it's like, imagine like in the morning, sun's coming up and like it's like these construction guys in a hard hat like walking to their job site.
I love that.
Swings and
awesome.
like I was like hyped up. Like, I want to be a plumber.
Yeah.
I want to be a construction
I
worker.
think it's two things. One, I think that the plumbing industry and just the way people talk from generation to generation didn't serve the trades businesses well. They would say things like, you can make a good living, which is very vague. And Brad and I made a decision a long time ago that we would just share the real numbers, because when somebody says at 23 you can be making $100,000 a year, that is fundamentally different than saying at 23 you can have a pretty nice career.
Yeah.
And you don't have to drink Dr. Pepper, Mountain Dew, and smoke cigarettes the whole time. You know, you can live a really healthy lifestyle. And that's where the persona was that trades were just dirty and unhealthy.
The trades is like, it ain't much, but it's honest work.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. That's exactly
picture.
right.
And
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
No,
As the
no.
dude knocks down 110 grand a year, right? Like
Yeah.
it's part of that is being honest about what these jobs pay and the benefits they come with. And then the other part that we've learned over time, and probably more importantly, is it's not the kids, it's the parents that push kids away from the trades. I think when you explain it to a 15-year-old boy or whatever, a girl, whomever, that they don't have the same fear and the same sense of failure that their parents do. So it's the parents that are saying, you need to go pursue this college degree. And it's like, to what end? This person doesn't like school. They've never liked school. They don't get good grades. Why would you sign them up for $120,000 in 4 years more?
Quick pause to tell you about one of my new favorite spots in Indianapolis, Back 9 Golf. If you haven't been yet, you're missing out. This is the perfect way to get your swings in no matter what the weather's like outside. This place isn't your average golf range. It's a full-blown experience. Locally owned, locally operated, these guys are all about bringing the community together for a good time. They've got climate-controlled bays, great food, live music, and a bar that keeps the drinks flowing. And if you're looking for a place to host an event, birthday, corporate outing, bachelor party, Back 9 is the spot. They know how to throw down and make sure your crew has an unforgettable time. So next time you're looking for a night out that's more than just another bar, head to Back 9. Swing some clubs, grab some drinks, and support a business that's keeping it local. Check them out at back9golf.com or just pull up and see what all the hype's about. Tell them you heard about it on Get In. That conditioning over time, right? Because when you're 5 years old and you tell everyone you want to be a trash man, your mom and dad say, oh, that's so cute, sweetheart.
Right.
And then when you're 15, you're like, I want to be a trash man. And they're like, you need to have more ambition.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Was that hard for you guys when you know, like you go through and you have to tell people, yeah, we're starting a plumbing company or we're working in plumbing? Like, Was there, I don't know, I don't want to say like shame, but like embarrassment a little bit around that?
I would say
it was for me, 100%.
Initially at first, and then as soon as we started having success, I think it became a point of pride for both of
Yep.
us.
That was
Like
exactly
Brad
what
and I
it was.
never leave the house without Hope Plumbing stuff.
Well, winning solves everything, right? So like
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's what it was. I think that's like almost enlightening for thinking back. I think we both just wanted to win in this space, and that's where the drive came from.
I love it when I can find ties. So it's like to social media and like the business. When I started putting out videos, no one watched them. They were terrible. My friends would make fun of me. They're like, "Oh, dude,
Yeah.
it's so cringy. Like,
Yeah.
why are you talking about hidden gems?" And then you get a video that does 250,000 views, and now all of a sudden people are like giving me free experiences. And I'm like, "Hey, you guys want to go to a Pacers game? You want to go to a Colts game?"
Yeah,
They're like,
yeah.
Dude, it's so like, let me hold your camera while you make this video. Like, it's so cool. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, gentleman, I'm talking to
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
So, but winning solves everything. It really does.
So yes, I had a huge chip on my shoulder, and sometimes I don't know if I still have that, or if I'm losing that, or if it's changing, or what. But there was a number of years that I kept what people have said to me, even in passing, or what a teacher might have said, or a friend's parent, or whatever. It was like that Michael Jordan like kill list, like take a note and never forget what that was.
No, I'm with you
Brad's
on
got
that
a
one.
list for sure.
I think if you're competitive, this is the thing. In Indiana, there's not that many bad people, I would say. Like there's a lot of there's not a lot of enemies. Like yes, there's, the outliers here and there.
Sure.
But like building up this mantra in your head of like, I'm competing against this thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm competing against Big Plumbing. Like we're taking down the man of Big Plumbing.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I think having that is motivating and powerful.
I mean, that's definitely one of the places where Brad and I aligned. Winning was the option, period.
And it could be plumbing. It could have been selling
Yeah.
forks or whatever. Like it could have been anything.
There were
And you learn
lots of options.
winning is in a lot of different things. It's not just a financial thing. It is winning by
For sure.
supporting the community, and winning by being able to spend time with your family. And to go back to our employees and the type of life you can have being a plumber is we are very big on a work-life balance. We don't force guys to work
we
weekends
force
or
them
on
not
call.
to.
Yeah, we don't
back
want to
guys
do
off all the time. If we
Yeah.
find out somebody's getting too much overtime, it's like, stop. You're going to burn yourself out. You're going to hate this in 6 months. Like, don't do that to yourself.
Again,
It's
be
not gonna help
consistent.
you.
The same thing. You don't have to pack. We're not cramming for a test here. Let's just keep. So, just again, that was a big part too. Is just having people have that freedom also and experiencing that.
I love it. Well, we've come to the end of the show where I have some fun lightning round questions and different things that we have to talk about to wrap it up. So the first question is our Younger Years segment. It's brought to you by our friends at Orr Fellowship. They're a great organization here in Indiana helping develop young business leaders across the state. Jack, what advice would you give to yourself at 22 years old?
Find Brad and get busy as quickly as you can.
Yeah. Okay. So start working towards your dream.
Yeah, just go.
Yes, I would just simply say just start. I don't think you're as far away from your goals, whatever those are, as people really think they are. They think that attaining whatever it is, I would say just do it because and just go
Nike?
after it. Yeah,
There's a brand.
yeah. But just start, because I think you're a lot closer to what you want to accomplish than what people realize they are. I think it seems far in their head, but if they start working hard and being consistent, you'll get there.
That's great advice. Let's say there's a early career plumber, service technician listening to this podcast or seeing this clip on Instagram. What is a tip that you would give them to help accelerate their career in a trades?
Go speak to the people they work with and ask them that question. Go say to them, how do I improve in this industry? What can I do better? Where are the parts that I'm missing? I mean, Brad early on came to when I was working in the office and said, how do I get my own truck? And I was like, well, this is what it would look like. You would need to commit to doing these things. And he was like, okay, I want to do that. And then he had his own truck. So it's go ask. Go. Brad says all the time, and I love it, closed mouths don't get fed. Like, you got to speak up.
I want to know what you want out of
Tell me the answers.
My lightning round answer would be to call Hope Plumbing and come in and talk to us, and then we'll employ you, and you can start working with us.
If they're listening to like an entrepreneurship
dead
and business
serious.
podcast and they're like trying to get better, boom, call these guys.
Yeah.
And that's like,
call us, and we're happy to
1000%.
talk, and we're also happy just to chat through exactly what Jack said. What is it that you're aiming for, hey, maybe I know somebody over here that can do that for you, or maybe we're the perfect fit. But however, back to what Colleen was saying before we started this, the kid that has been with us for 7 or 8 years now was raking my leaves, and he was working so hard. And it was just as simple as, hey man, do you want to, and started that conversation.
I think I actually just pulled me up to a quote that I saw from Martin Luther King Jr., which was like talking about sweeping streets, and it's like a street sweeper. And if you're gonna be a street sweeper, then be the best dang street sweeper that the world's ever seen. And it's like whatever the thing is, like you're raking leaves, like you're about increasing your surface area for luck.
Yeah.
Who would have thought you could just be the best leaf raker that would lead you to a 10-year career?
Yeah.
Like those little things matter.
You know what? It does, to touch on that point, it does matter what you're doing day in, day out. People see you. You never know who you're in front of. Somebody who worked for us for years was our waitress at Bob Evans. She ended up being in accounting for us for a number of years. But you know what she did? She was so amazing as a waitress. We literally said, do you want to come in and work with us? Our AT&T rep was killing it. She worked for us for years. And just like I said,
from Patachou.
Yeah, just like Freddie,
Sorry,
like
Patachou.
you never know what these. I mean, this kid was just 18 years old, busting his butt for hours, and I'm like, man, this kid's got a work ethic. Like, let's put this in a direction. You know what I mean?
I love that. I haven't heard someone talk about Bob Evans in forever. So glad to know that
That's
some
how
people
long
are
ago
still
it
I mean,
was.
Brad
Yeah.
and I have offered jobs to people in the car wash, at fast food
my God,
places, dude, out to restaurants. All like, hey, you should come talk to us. Like,
You don't know who
never-
I am, and
you
you're
never
treating
have
me
any
like
idea.
this. Yeah, like we could really do something. You just seem like a great person, and that's where we, a lot of the hiring is character. We can teach you plumbing and all these other things, but if you have a great character, that's all that we need. We can build it from there.
That's such great advice. And especially in these tight-knit communities, everyone comes on and talks about how, Indianapolis, you're only one phone call away from everyone. And it's like you're only one good interaction away from your dream job.
100%.
Or your next opportunity, or your next piece of luck, or your next this, that, or the other thing.
for
Yeah.
sure.
I love that. That gets me fired up. Out at Bob Evans, just like, you know what, you should come work for us.
Yeah, I have a sophomore right now, and I tell him all the time, like, hey man, people remember, you never know whose parent you might end up working for, or needing a job from. Like, be a good person, do the right thing. Like, I mean, we're all they're all high schoolers. They'll mess up time and time again or whatever. But being polite, and people remember that stuff. You never know when it's going to circle back, or who's watching you, or what opportunities in the future.
Are there any plumbing horror stories that still stick with you to this day?
Early on, Jack and I were working in someone's basement. It was freezing outside. It was like snowing, and we had been working so many hours, without breaks, and you're doing these things so fast. And I cut a live pipe above the valve that I shut off rather than under it. So I just literally, just not thinking, done it a million times, just cut open a live line in somebody's basement.
The sound is horrifying. I knew exactly what had happened.
Yeah.
You should,
and
then there's just water bouncing off the ceiling.
And
10 feet away.
and that's one of those times where you've got to kind of jump on the grenade and get the
What do you do?
We got a valve, and I got really wet, and it was really cold, and
you use a compression fitting.
yeah, you had to use
you're
a
just, like,
compression.
fighting the
yes,
water?
yes, you're fighting water spraying all
soaked.
over.
Just soaked.
So that's not gross. Whereas I did clean drains for a long time, and I'd have to
gross.
think about some. I've had some really
The
gross
nastiest
situations.
thing in plumbing by far is a grease trap. Everybody thinks it's a drain line, but it's a grease trap. So
grease trap.
in a restaurant, the dishwasher or whatever, all of that grease flows through a drain line, then it goes through a box, basically. That on one side of the box, there's it's just an empty box, and the grease goes down to the bottom, and then the water goes up and flows up over the top. Because if you put grease out into the drains, it'll solidify and then clog the drains. So the grease traps need to be cleaned out depending on usage, once a month or whatever. And cleaning grease out of a
wildly
grease
disgusting.
trap is the nasty. I mean, it's cooked, solidified animal fat that's 6 weeks old. Like, it's disgusting. It's
really bad.
There is nothing more foul smelling than a grease trap.
All right.
And then real quick, Jack used to always clean drain lines without gloves on.
This is
So
not-
he would have a snake. Everyone has seen these drain snakes with a long cable on it, and he wouldn't wear gloves, and it would make me insane back in the day. 'Cause sometimes he would maybe wipe his face, and then there was it was.
I had stuff to do, man.
We were on the grind, but I can't believe. Yeah, so
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, all right, just so everyone knows.
Sorry.
I'll give you a fist bump at the end of this.
yeah.
I think I shook his hand when he walked in.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, these are the same 3 questions I ask everyone who sits in the chair. Brad, we'll start with you and we'll go to Jack.
Yep.
Brad, what's something the world needs to know about Indiana?
One, to be honest, the cost of living is extremely affordable. We have a ton of awesome stuff to do. I think we've done a great job developing the Carmel's Fishers area down to, Fountain Square and Mass Ave and all of that. And so I think that's great. I think the seasons here are phenomenal. I think we have amazing summers and springs. And while I don't like February and where we are right now in Indiana, but yeah, I
Like even the first snow is fun though.
it's
like
amazing. I
magical.
loved it. Yeah, I went sledding this year with my kids for first time in a long time. So it was I think Indiana is a great place to raise a family, and it's extremely affordable with plenty to do.
Jack, what's something the world needs to know about Indiana?
I think one of the things that people should know about Indiana is this concept of Midwestern or Hoosier hospitality. So I was just talking to a friend of mine about this process, and specifically about the efficacy, about how effective it is to be hospitable and polite, how meaningful that is at work and how it helps you. And I think there's this misconception that you need to be like tough and gruff with people and always try to get the most out of them and beat them up on pricing or always posture like you're the tough guy. And I think that's a mistake. And that's the conversation that we were having, is that I think that by being hospitable and pleasant and slowing down a little bit and saying things like, how was your day? Did you have a nice weekend? Like, those are very meaningful. And I think oftentimes people around the country mistake that for a weakness of some kind. And I think they've totally misread the situation, that comes from a place of like comfort and confidence and kindness and what. So he's an attorney.
That's a good one, Jack.
Thanks.
That's good.
I've been thinking about it. He's an attorney, and I asked him, like, when you do these deals and you're doing these processes, like, which one's more effective? And he's like, oh, hospitality by far moves the needle more than the like tough guy posturing stuff.
Yeah, the Hoosier hospitality and that mindset, taking that into everything that you do.
Yeah.
Brad, we're going to come back to you. What is a hidden gem in Indiana?
His place is over on 30th and Shadeland, right by Academy Volleyball, where my son plays. And nobody knows that they have this amazing food there. They have
what's it called?
It's called His Place. And it's literally on 30th, and it's like the only restaurant right there. And they have amazing food. They kind of have weird like island hours, like kind of might be closed certain times. But the food is unbeliable. I feel like
His
if I gave
Place.
some thought. Yeah.
That's a gem. I've never heard that
There you
one.
go. If you drive by it, you'll see it next time. If you're, I don't know why you're on 30th and Shadeland or what you're doing. It's because it's kind of an industrial area right there. It's not like a neighborhood. It's where like it's right by where Academy is, which is just an old warehouse that's huge, So
His Place Eatery, chicken and waffles, barbecue and soul food.
yeah, and it's like you get a huge plate. It's
Okay, not at all as I was
amazing food.
expecting.
Yeah, it's really good.
It kind of gives me country kitchen vibes.
Yeah, it's definitely
That
like a
makes sense.
country kitchen, but
Yeah.
that's definitely that is for sure one nobody I don't think discusses very often.
Oh, the signature peach cobbler waffle and chicken. Sign me
yeah,
up.
see things
His
like
Place Eatery, established 2009, ribs and soul food.
yeah.
All right, that's a gem.
I
Holy
thought
smokes.
about that because I drive by it like 4 days a week right now.
I love
for
it.
practices.
Jack, what's a hidden gem in Indiana?
The Pete Dye golf course at French Lick
Yeah.
is amazing. It does not feel like you are in Indiana. It feels like you're in like southern Tennessee. You're up on top of a mountain. I've gone with a friend the last couple of falls and played golf down there. And actually, the West Baden building is amazing as well. Just period. The glass roof, the dome it's an amazing building. But the Pete Dye golf course, you get up to the top of that hill, there is no way you will feel like you're in Indiana, and it's 2 hours from here. It's gorgeous.
When you look off the back balcony or the back deck of the clubhouse,
It's crazy.
and it's just like rolling hills. I did a video down there with them when they hosted the Corn Ferry Tour, and they host it for the next couple years too.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And it's just like, how is this Indiana?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it seems
beautiful.
fake.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were like telling me like you won't believe how pretty this is, and I'm like, yeah, cool. I'm sure it's
It
gonna
has
be
more
awesome.
of a Tennessee type of
Yeah,
like
and I got down there and I got like, you're there, you're around all this pretty stuff. It's southern Indiana, it's great, and then you drive like 9 minutes. It's not even that far up this hill, and you're just like, where am I right now? It's an amazing experience.
It's like there's not many times. I think Indiana is beautiful, but there's not that many times where I'm like just driving and I'm like in awe.
Sure.
And at the top of that golf course, you're just like,
Yeah, it is.
Dang, Jack, that was a
awe-inspiring
good
for
one,
sure.
too.
yeah, that's a really
I'm on
solid
fire
one.
today, Brad.
Come
I got
on.
a great night's sleep.
All right, final question that I have here.
Okay.
It's just for Jack because he's the philosopher in the room.
Oh, God.
But what's a lesson or principle or practice from philosophy that you've applied to plumbing?
The point that I was talking about earlier about not being so binary, that it doesn't have to be this or that. Multiple things can exist at the same time. It's not a question of, do you have to support your community because it's good for your business or because you really want to? It can be both. And that's very much something that you learn through doing philosophy, is that multiple sort of truths, multiple things can exist at the same time.
Is there a writer that influenced you with that?
I'm sure somebody has addressed this point somewhere specifically, but I think it's just that process of doing philosophy where you're doing so much critical thinking and you're problem solving that you realize, like, even this question itself is false. Like, it sets up a false dichotomy, but I don't have to pick A or B.
It doesn't have to be philosophy or plumbing. It could be both.
That's right.
I think that, and it's
Most
crazy.
of life can be that way.
Yeah, and I have, I think we put out 99 episodes or something like that by now, maybe 100.
I hope this is your 100th episode.
I hope it is
That'd
too. That would be
super
fun.
cool.
And I think
Let's
that
just release this for the 100th.
Yeah.
we could probably potentially make that happen.
Yeah.
But it's so much of it is like you position this person to that person, or plumbing versus philosophy, or this and that, and no one that has sat in this chair has ever said like, well, it doesn't have to be blank. Like, why can't it be both? Why can't it support your community and be advantageous in marketing? Why can't it?
Yeah.
Like, why can't it be cool and be a plumber?
like,
Why can't you be with your family and run a business and make people happy and support?
Once you
why
wrap your
can't we
head
do all
around
these
it, it's
things?
so simple.
And it's like, maybe it's a sliding scale, right? Where it's like,
Yeah, of course.
You
Not
know,
everything can exist.
it's
Like,
not all happy
you can't have a
hunky-dory.
square circle.
Yeah.
That's
It
not
goes,
going
goes
to
in
work.
waves, right?
that was the philosophy bomb that I was looking for.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Heck yeah. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on, sharing the journey. 17 years of Hope Plumbing. It's amazing. Again, anyone that's in Indianapolis in general, I know you guys are starting to like even broaden out. And I think I was talking with Stephanie, and you guys are like doing more work up in like Carmel and Westfield and places like that, which I think is awesome. And it's cool to see you guys growing. And thank you for being awesome members of the Indianapolis community and being supporters of so many great local events and charities and nonprofits, and I mean, a lot of things, right? It's awesome to have great community members like you around here.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's a tremendous
Thanks, Nate.
privilege.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Get In. If you like what you heard, make sure you leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. This show is made possible by our friends up at Sweetwater. Whether you're looking to start a podcast or take your content to the next level, click the link in the description to see all of my gear recommendations at sweetwater.com. If you want a behind-the-scenes look at everything we're doing across the state, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Nate Spangle. Thank you so much for listening and being part of what makes the Hoosier State great. We'll see you next time here on Get In.